Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a vet tech here at Pope Memorial Humane Society, and this is Whitney. Whitney is a 6-month-old, approximate age hamster, and she is currently available for adoption. And we'd like to welcome back Layne Case for story time.
Well, it's absolutely wonderful to be back. I'm very excited to read my next book. So remember, we've read 4 different Charlie books, and Charlie is that little dog, and he has that long tail, and he's very different. And remember, we talked about how being different is actually wonderful. I mean, can you imagine a world where we were all the same? It would be so boring. What's important is that we do positive things with our difference, and that's what Charlie did throughout the books. So today I'm going to read you a story called Charlie and His Lost Friend. And this story came about because I had a neighbor who had a dog that was rescued. And I thought, wouldn't this be an interesting story to write about Charlie and his lost friend, or new friend that he actually finds. You're also going to get a chance to meet Charlie's co-star, Tucker. But for now, let me start by reading Charlie and His Lost Friend. It was a beautiful summer day in a small town in New Hampshire. Charlie loved to walk around his neighborhood, making sure all his neighbors and friends were safe. Charlie is a little dog. He has big floppy ears, skinny legs, huge paws, and a 3-foot tail. At first, most people who meet Charlie only notice his tail, but they soon learn what a wonderful dog he is and how his tail has helped so many others. Charlie was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, just around the time of Hurricane Katrina. It was one of the worst storms ever. Many families lost everything and ended up relocating to other areas. That is how Charlie came to live in New Hampshire. Charlie loved his new home, but he missed his friends in New Orleans, especially Lucky. He never knew what happened to Lucky. One day they were playing together. The next day, everything was destroyed. He never saw Lucky again. Charlie did have lots of new friends in his neighborhood. There was Louie the lizard. He lived right next door to Charlie. There was Misha, Mia, Misty, and Meeser, the Siamese cats who lived across the street. And there was Bruno. He lived down in the cul-de-sac. Bruno was a pretty big dog. He and Charlie were often seen walking up and down the streets, making sure everything was okay. One day, Charlie learned there was a new dog in the neighborhood. He'd overheard his family talking about the neighbors, Todd and Tiffini Walker's new dog. It seemed he was adopted from a rescue shelter. So Charlie headed out to try to find this new dog. He thought it would be great to introduce him to all his friends and make him feel welcomed. Just as Charlie came to the end of his driveway, he noticed a big dog standing in the middle of the road just a ways down the road. He was looking right at Charlie, growling and baring his teeth. Charlie stopped, not knowing if he should continue on. He decided, as scary as this dog seemed, he would show him he wanted to be his friend. As Charlie got closer, he could see the dog a little clearer. He sure was different. One ear was partially missing. He was pretty scruffy looking, with a few scars on his legs and body. He did not look very friendly. The dog began to walk toward Charlie, growling louder and louder. Charlie wondered if he should growl back just to show him he wasn't scared, but he was really afraid. He thought maybe he might just turn around and run home. But he didn't want to do that either. So he decided to use kindness in hopes of befriending this new dog. As the dog started walking toward Charlie, Charlie began to shake, wondering if he had made the right decision to stay put. "Hello," Charlie said softly. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I heard you just moved in." The dog continued to growl at Charlie. He wasn't about to let his guard down. He would show Charlie who was in charge. Charlie continued, "My name is Charlie. What's your name?" For a moment, the dog stopped growling. Could he trust this Charlie dog? Could this dog be his friend? No way. Never again would he trust anyone. "I'm Tucker, and I'm not looking for any friends," Tucker said fiercely. Charlie stood his ground. "Well, I just wanted to welcome you and introduce you to some of my friends." Tucker growled. Charlie continued, "So where did you come from?" Tucker hesitated for a moment. He was embarrassed to share that he had been living in a rescue shelter. His family had dropped him off one day and never even said goodbye. "My family had to move and couldn't take me with them," Tucker explained. "But it wasn't because they didn't love me," he quickly added. "They did. Tucker stopped. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he continued, "They thought it was best for me to live with another family." Charlie could see the pain in Tucker's eyes. He also realized something else. It almost felt as if he had met Tucker before, but that was impossible. Charlie would have remembered a dog like Tucker. He had lots of scars. Charlie wondered how Tucker got them. Before Charlie could respond, Tucker growled again. "I'm not interested in being friends with you or anyone else," Tucker said. "Just leave me alone and stay out of my territory." Charlie was shocked. His territory? Who did this dog think he was? This neighborhood didn't belong to anyone. It was everybody's neighborhood. Charlie had all he could do not to challenge Tucker. He decided not to react to Tucker's angry threat and turned around, heading back home. He looked back and said, "Well, Tucker, still want to welcome you to the neighborhood." Days went by before Charlie ventured outside again. He was afraid he might meet up with Tucker. Charlie was not the kind of dog who liked to fight. He just wanted to be friends. Finally, Charlie decided he couldn't allow Tucker to keep him inside. He really missed all his friends. So Charlie headed out. He hadn't gone very far when he heard someone crying out. It was coming from Tucker's backyard. "Oh dear," thought Charlie. "What am I going to do?" He didn't want to trespass on Tucker's property, especially after the threat the other day. Charlie heard the cry again, this time sounding more desperate, almost like a howl. He started to walk toward the sound. It was coming from the woods near the brook. As Charlie got closer, he saw Tucker sitting on a rock in the middle of the brook. He looked very frightened. When Tucker saw Charlie, he began yelling out. Charlie yelled out, "Tucker, the brook isn't very deep. Just dog paddle to the edge." Tucker shouted, "I can't swim, and I'm really afraid of water." Charlie was surprised. Every dog could paddle, and Tucker, afraid of water? Charlie thought for a moment, then yelled back, "Tell you what, my tail is 3 feet long and very strong. I'll toss it out to you so you can grab onto it. Then I'll pull you to shore." Charlie tossed his tail to Tucker, who grabbed onto it with his teeth. Charlie yelped. Tucker was so afraid he didn't realize how hard he had bitten down. Charlie decided to endure the pain and get Tucker to the shore as quickly as possible. Once back to shore, Tucker shook himself dry. He looked up at Charlie, trying to cover up his fear. After all, he was the mean dog in the neighborhood everyone avoided. He didn't want or need any friends. He liked being by himself. Charlie looked at Tucker. It was clear he had been really scared. Charlie hoped he could show Tucker he wanted to be his friend. "Tucker, are you okay? I realize being new to the neighborhood, you wouldn't know Malago Brook isn't very deep," said Charlie. Tucker was really embarrassed. Fact was, The brook wasn't deep at all. Tucker could have walked from the rock to the shore, but his fear of water made it impossible. Tucker did all he could not to cry. He was really lonely and he wanted to have friends, but the last time he got close to someone, they abandoned him. Not only had he lost his family, but his best friend too. Tucker liked Charlie, even if he was different from other dogs Tucker had met. Big floppy ears, skinny legs, big paws, and that tail. Very strange. However, Tucker wasn't all that good looking either. After all those years of fighting, he had scars to prove it. Charlie looked at Tucker and said quietly, "Tucker, I'm not sure why you are so angry, but I would really like to be your friend." Tucker put his head down. He had started to cry and didn't want Charlie to see, but he wanted a friend again, so he decided to share his story. "When I was young," he told Charlie, "I lived in New Orleans. One morning, a hurricane hit land and my family lost everything. They put me in a shelter while they tried to rebuild their home, but they never came back to get me." Tucker went quiet for a moment, then continued, "And my best friend left without saying goodbye. I was really angry. I started fighting with all the other dogs in the shelter. The owners of the shelter separated me from the other dogs. I spent many long days by myself." It wasn't easy for Tucker, but he kept on with his story. "One day, Todd and Tiffini came to the shelter and adopted me. Oh, they try to be loving and kind, but I know eventually they'll abandon me just like my other family and my best friend, Charlie. I made a decision back then," Tucker said grimly, "not to get close to anyone ever again." Charlie couldn't believe what he was hearing. He knew he had recognized something about Tucker the first day they met. "Tucker, it's me, Charlie, from New Orleans. Only when we lived there, your name was Lucky," Charlie exclaimed. Tucker opened his eyes wide. "Charlie? Charlie Whitney? Really? Is that you?" he asked. "It sure is, my friend," said Charlie, wagging his tail, jumping up and down. Tucker and Charlie spent the next 4 hours catching up. Charlie apologized for not saying goodbye. He had no idea he was moving after Hurricane Katrina. Tucker and Charlie decided that the past, difficult as it was, would not affect their future together. So they picked up where their friendship had left off. Charlie introduced Tucker to all his friends. At first, Louie was really afraid of Tucker. He wasn't a very friendly-looking dog. Misha kept her babies close to her in case Tucker tried to bite them. Tucker tried to show them he just wanted to be their friend. Bruno stood next to Tucker, making sure Tucker understood Bruno was the neighborhood watchdog. When Tucker made it clear he would not challenge Bruno, Bruno asked Tucker to join him and Charlie when they walk around the neighborhood. Tucker was honored. Now the neighborhood would be even safer than ever before. So as you can see, this is Tucker back in 2015. And in just a few minutes, you're going to get a chance to meet him because he's here as our guest. I also want to show you that in this book, there is some information about Hurricane Katrina, which happened 15 years ago on August 29th, 2005. So you'll be able to read some information about that as well. And then from a dear friend of mine who actually lives in New Orleans, she gives us her input as to what it was like 10 years after Hurricane Katrina. And one of the things she says in her little note is, "Hurricane Katrina bonded us forever. We now know if we could overcome Katrina, we can overcome anything. We are resilient." So that's the story of Charlie and his lost friend. And I want to get right to the opportunity for you to meet Charlie's co-star, Tucker. I want to introduce to you Tucker, who is here. He is Charlie's co-star. And when Tucker came to our neighborhood, I'd learned that he had been rescued. And so I asked his mom and dad if I could include him in my story. So Mom is here today. So hi Tiffini, nice
Hello.
to see you
Nice
again.
to see you.
I'm so excited to have you here to be able to share some information about your experience when you adopted Tucker. So I have some questions for you. So my first question is, what made you decide to adopt a dog?
So we had a German Shepherd who passed away 6 months earlier, and we were missing, 4 feet in the house. So we started going online and looking for a dog to adopt.
Okay.
And we found Tucker online.
Online. So did it take you a long time to find him, or?
It was a few weeks,
Mhm.
and we had 3 dogs that we went to visit, trying to find the best personality for us. And right when we met Tucker, we knew he was the one.
He was the one.
Yes.
Can you give me an idea of so you find him online, and then what happens after that?
So he was in a foster house, so we went to the foster house, visited him, we had to fill out an application, put a deposit down, and a lot of people were trying to get the same pets, so it was almost like a little competition.
Right.
But right when we met him and the foster people met us, they knew that it was a good fit.
So he was here in this
In
area?
New Hampshire.
In
Yep.
New Hampshire.
Yep. In Londonderry, actually.
And do you know where he was rescued from?
Somewhere down south.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't really have all the stories,
Right.
but they did say he was from down south, and he was with his sister.
Oh.
At the foster house.
Yep.
Yep.
How old was he?
He was 3 months old when we adopted him.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
I know he's really, he's changed, he's gotten a little older.
Yeah, he's 10 years old now, 10 and a half.
Wow.
Yes.
What a great, he really has been, he's actually come on book signings with me. He just sits nice and quietly and lets people pat him, and he's just quite a gentle dog. He's really been wonderful. So if you were going to talk to somebody, or if somebody was interested in adopting a dog, what are some of the things that they should know?
I would say it really changes your life, especially it was just Todd and I, so we don't have anyone else in our household, and it's a lot of responsibility, especially when they're that young. If you're gonna crate train them, you have to stick to it, and check on them every few hours so they can go out to the bathroom. You shouldn't leave them all day. You have to have some extra money aside in case they get injured. So, things that, it was definitely a life changer. For the first few weeks, they wake you up in the middle of the night, so you have to be prepared to deal with that. Probably similar to having a baby if you're not used to having a baby. But immediately we just fell in love with him. So you deal with those, and then you have a wonderful outcome of 10 years of, having companionship and unconditional love.
So on a day-to-day basis, what are the responsibilities? What do people need to know?
Making sure that either you have an electric fence or a fence, or you're going to go out on a leash with them. You don't want them to run off. So first thing in the morning, you have to let them out, feed them, brush their teeth if you want to do that, or give them something to clean their teeth, because that's really important. Regular checkups. He gets a lot of biscuits, but you have to make sure that he stays away from dangerous things. Actually, recently, Todd put out some mouse poisoning, and he got into it, and we almost had a heart attack. So we're calling the emergency animal control number, and luckily, as big as he is, they said he would be fine, because he only ate a little portion of it. But just, realizing that you're responsible for their well-being.
Right.
So it's a burden, but it's also a blessing.
Right, absolutely. Well, it's like anything else, when you take responsibility for the care of somebody else or some animal.
Right.
You have to know and understand what it is that you're going to have to do and make that commitment.
Exactly.
So,
because it is a commitment for life.
Right. Right. And so so he's 10 years old, and what kind of things does he like to do?
His favorite thing is going to daycare.
Really?
He goes once a week. So we call it camp.
Yes.
So in the morning on Wednesdays, that's his favorite thing. And then walking is his next favorite thing.
and then just doing this. He's not a huge toy fan. He doesn't chase sticks or balls or anything like that. You throw a ball and he looks at you like, why are you doing that?
It's for you, not for him.
Yep. So he's pretty mellow. We're really lucky. He doesn't have a mean bone in his body, which is why we really love him.
And I just have to say, so does he still like donuts? Because I know
Oh, yeah.
there's a picture of him in the book about Tucker waiting for his donut.
Yes, he loves donuts. So if we go to a local coffee shop, he recognizes the bag when we come home.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, always plain donuts, no
Yep.
chocolate or anything.
Yep, great.
But yes, he loves donuts.
So, I was told that he won some kind of award, so tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so we went through a lot of obedience training, just basic puppy training, then obedience 1, 2, and then agility, which he was not a huge fan of because he's not treat motivated, but he is Canine Good Citizen certified. So that is a national program. It's a lot of training. They have to be off leash and do like 20 different steps and pay attention to you. And you can't have treats on you, so they have to really just listen and know commands. And he passed with flying colors and got a certificate. So now he can go into schools or nursing homes, things like that.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I guess I didn't know. So you've got your PhD, huh?
His puppy PhD.
His puppy PhD. Well, good for you. He doesn't seem like he's impressed with himself at all. He just seems very content to be here and relax with everyone. So, well, great. That's really interesting. I did not realize that. So I'm happy to know this well-trained
Yes.
animal here, friend. All right. So that kind of wraps it up for this week. I did want to let you know that next week I'm going to read a story written by a woman from Wisconsin, an author from Wisconsin, and the name of the book is called Rusty the Elevator Dog. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. I thought so too when I first heard about it, but wait till you see who Rusty is and what he does. So remember, be kind, be safe, and I'll see you next time.